Hi everyone. So today I thought that I would talk about my experience in quarantine because New York City has it's basically like a program where if you can't isolate in your own home because there's not really obviously a way to isolate, they offer you to stay in a hotel room. So I did that. I live at home. I live with my mom and my two siblings, and I share a room. I also share a bathroom. So, my first immediate thing was, I need to get out of here. So, I was lucky enough to hear about the COVID hotel, and I called. And, this video, I guess, is just going to be explaining sort of the whole process, like what I did, how I set it up, and then the actual experience being in the hotel. So if you would like to hear that, tales from a global pandemic, then keep on watching. So I started having symptoms on Valentine's Day. I woke up and was just like, I could tell I had a fever, and the thing is that I do have chronic illnesses. I know that there's a huge debate going on now with the coronavirus about whether or not it's that serious or if it's something that people who are considered healthy should really worry about, and or only people who are sick or already have like chronic problems or diseases or anything like that should be the ones to kind of like sit and isolate and all that jazz. Personally, I think obviously everybody should be wary. It's not even necessarily, I guess, if you are somebody who is healthy, you have a relatively healthy immune system, maybe you don't necessarily have to worry about yourself, but, it's not just about you. I guess that's kind of my overall thoughts on the situation, regardless of the severity that maybe you or a friend or somebody has, experienced around you, and if it's not that bad, that doesn't take away from the fact that, millions of people have died at this point from this virus. I've lost a good friend of mine from this virus. I know people who have lost good friends, and perfectly healthy people have passed away. So I think any level of taking care of yourself and being mindful of others is important. But I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just go and get tested for the virus. It's important. I don't want to infect anybody. I don't want to hurt anyone. So that's what I did on Monday. So Monday, I was still feeling weird. I started to have those like whatever regular routine body aches and stuff like that. Still had a fever, but it was low grade. But I went to go get tested, and I took my mom to come with me. And she tested negative, and I tested positive. So that's when I knew. I was like, okay, I need to get out of my house. I can't even go back inside. So basically, that's when this program came into play. Now, this program is made by the NYC Health and Hospitals. They basically, so what I did to do it was I went online and I kind of just Googled the program. I Googled COVID hotel program NYC, and I was lucky that it came up online. There was a number for it. So I called the number, and I had a very long wait period, which is fine. I mean, there's tons of people who are getting sick, so I can wait 45 minutes, which it basically was. I think I waited about 45, 50 minutes until somebody finally was able to pick up my call. They basically just asked me what the deal was. I explained to them, I tested positive, and I took the rapid test and the regular PCR test, and the rapid came out positive. So my mom was kind of weary, because I do have health problems. She was like, I don't want you to go somewhere by yourself because we don't know how severe it's going to get. But I just was like, no, I'm not staying in this house. I have no way to protect everybody else. Why would I stay here? I always have health problems, so it doesn't really matter to me like what happens to me. I'm used to it. I'm used to going to the hospital or doing this or that. So if I can keep everybody else safe, like that's my main priority. So I called the hotline again, and a woman picked up, and I kind of just told her like, hey, I don't have anywhere to isolate in my house. You know, I'm positive and my mom is negative. My siblings are going to go get the test, you know, today or tomorrow and see what the deal is, but I have nowhere to go. I have nowhere to, you know, there's no way. I share a bathroom and a bedroom in my house, and, you know, should I wait for the PCR test results to come back, or should I just enter this program? And they basically told me, no, I should isolate immediately. And they, you know, they just took down my information. They took down, you know, my name, my age, my phone number, all that jazz. Like basically what would be on like a health insurance card. I'm lucky that I do have health insurance. And yeah, and then the woman basically, it's never a video unless my computer email goes off. Yeah, so the woman basically, she basically told me that they would contact the hotel, and the hotel would get a room ready for me. And then once they get the okay that they have a, you know, sanitized, cleaned room for me to stay in, they will call me to help organize transportation to go there. And then when I get there, I have to quarantine anywhere from 10 to 14 days. So I was like, okay, great, cool. And the woman told me that they would be calling me either that same day or sometime the next day in the morning. So obviously I was hoping that they would call me that same day because I didn't want to sleep in my house. Honestly, I can be very stubborn, so I probably would have just stayed awake all day and stayed outside in my, you know, in my apartment building. But yeah, so thankfully that did not happen. Somebody did call me a few hours later. I did end up going back inside my apartment, but I kind of just stood like in the corner, and I had to wear gloves, and I was wearing a mask, and I kind of was my mom was nice enough to kind of go around and put stuff in a bag for me that I could be able to take. So I did that, and then somebody called me, and they were like, hey, you know, we have a room for you. It's ready. This is the address. You know, would you like to go tonight, or would you like to go tomorrow morning? And I was like, sooner the better, right? Sooner the better. And they were like, great. You know, that makes our life so much easier and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, cool. So at this point, I think I had spoken to somebody and scheduled all this stuff at around 5:30 that Monday, and somebody got back to me around 9 p.m. So the person basically told me, okay, we're going to, figure out transportation for you, and they should be there in about an hour, like within an hour. So I was like, okay, great, cool. Yeah, so transportation. People know that hospitals are notorious at being kind of lame for transportation. Sometimes it can be late, sometimes it doesn't really necessarily come on time. I had to wait an extra hour and a half for transportation to show up at my house. Obviously, it was a free service, so I'm not really complaining. I guess the only thing that kind of sucked was that I ended up waiting a very long time in the rain because I was kind of nervous. I didn't know if they were going to call me to tell me that the driver was there, or if I just kind of had to say, okay, it's an hour, let me go downstairs and hope to God that this person remembers, where I am. So I went there and I was downstairs, and finally they came about like an hour or so later, and somebody did call me twice to apologize that they were late and that there was a miscommunication with the transportation. So I thought that was really nice. It was just a standard taxi, and it took me there to to the hotel. Now, the hotel was in Times Square. It was downtown. And I mean, it's kind of funny in a way when you think about it, because usually in New York, Times Square is like the most populated area ever. You know, it's one of the most populated areas in the city, and there's always so many people there. So it feels kind of ironic that they would have a COVID hotel like right technically in the epicenter of everything, but obviously because the pandemic is going on, there's not really anybody there. Yeah. So I stayed at a hotel in around Times Square. When I got there, obviously they're very diligent at the hotel. You know, I came in, I didn't really touch anything. They checked me, and then I kind of sat down on a chair while they checked everything in the system to make sure I was in the right place. They checked to make sure the room was still okay, and it was nice because I believe either the manager of the hotel or somebody who was working in the hospital program, they came up to me and they actually offered me a like $30 like Uber Eats discount, because they're like, oh, you know, it's late, we don't know if you've eaten, we want to make sure that you're comfortable and everything like that. And that was really cool. I mean, I've never used Uber Eats before, so that was an interesting experience that I got to do. So that was really nice. I wasn't expecting them to do that on top of the fact that, you know, this program is free. You're not paying for anything. You're not paying to stay in the hotel. You're not paying for food or, you know, any level of accommodations. You're not paying for this medical care. It's covered. You know what I mean? And same with transportation. So I don't know, it just felt a little bit like that, a little bit of like an extra mile sort of thing that, you know, somebody didn't have to do. So after the check-in process, they kind of took me upstairs. I stayed on the 8th floor. I don't know if that was supposed to be a specific thing or anything, but I stayed on the 8th floor. Before I even got to go into my room, they took me to this really weird room. It was just weird. Like, I guess I wasn't expecting it. I thought that they would just immediately want to take me to my room and not have me, like, be somewhere else and, like, potentially, like, contaminate another room. But they took me into a room that literally just had a desk and a chair in the middle of the room. And they asked me a bunch of questions, obviously, about if I tested positive, is everything on, you know, the sheet for the information that I sent correct. They checked my blood pressure, they checked my oxygen, they checked my temperature, they asked me what sort of symptoms that I was having, you know, and they kind of gave me like a survey. They sort of asked me like just my overall COVID experience, which I thought was interesting. And then they let me know that I would do another survey before I left the hotel, I guess, to let New York City know my experience and what happened. So after that, I mean, it was relatively short. After that, I got to go to my room. I mean, I feel like the room was a standard hotel room. I had a nice big old bed. That was the best part, because I have a twin size bed at home. Since I moved back from California, I've just had like a tiny little bed. I miss my queen size bed, so being able to be in a hotel room and stuff like that was really, really nice. Now, I wanted to talk about a couple things, I guess, like the experience of, you know, what they kind of offered and everything. Food-wise, I think they were really, really good at being sensitive to people's needs. Like, they had options for vegans, vegetarians. You know, I don't eat red meat, so they weren't going to give me anything with red meat. If you were gluten-free or celiac or anything like that, you know, you can make them aware and they would make accommodations for you. I will say that I kept my folder that they give. They give you a folder, and it kind of has just like a lot of paperwork and different things like schedules, and it also has key, like, phone numbers that you can call, basically, like, the nurses who are there if you need somebody to come help you fix certain things, clinical care, if you need mental health, mental health care. They have NYC Well, which is another program that was working relatively close to this program, too, just in case you're feeling, like, weird or depressed or, having to be isolated like that. And they gave a list of times for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So breakfast was between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. Lunch was between noon and 1 p.m. and dinner was between 5:30 and 6:30. Now, I'm going to get to the schedule and the check-ins in a moment because I would say that was probably, like, the most unpleasant thing about the entire situation for me personally. I mean, honestly, like, I feel really thankful that I had a place to go to. This pandemic, I don't know, it's weird in a way because during this pandemic, you almost feel a bit of, like, a survivor's guilt. Like, for the longest time, nobody in my household had gotten sick. We really stayed in. I mean, I didn't really go anywhere or do anything the entire time. There were very few times that I would leave the house, either to go to the hospital if I had an appointment, or, the occasional times that I would be able to go out and maybe see a friend or get some food to eat on the go. They're very far and few in between. So, you obviously see a lot of stuff going on in the world and you see a lot of people suffering, and it is difficult. It is hard, I think. And then you kind of wonder, like, what makes me lucky enough to not get sick or not die or have anything like that versus somebody else? Or why is it that, while I'm glad and I'm grateful that New York City has such an incredible program, it's like, I don't know. I think of, like, homeless people or stuff like that who don't even get access to those sorts of resources on a regular basis. And it's like, they don't have any healthcare, health insurance, or anything like that. And, I would say they're very susceptible to this virus and this pandemic. And, just anybody who is at risk and in poverty and all sorts of stuff. So that was kind of, I guess, one of the more emotional things that I went through. But yeah, I would say the scheduling and everything was kind of the worst bit. Everything else I would think was, very awesome and really generous. So yeah, going back to the food, they give you, like, little papers that have, like, this, what sort of meals and stuff that they offer, and they go by 2 weeks, basically. And I thought that, they're going to do 2-week intervals of food, so it must change up. No. It's pretty much the same. Like, they change up very few things. And at this point, I still had my taste and my smell. Even though I didn't have an appetite, I could still smell and I could still taste, so I was kind of like, I'm gonna try to eat a little bit. I didn't really eat that much, but also, like I said, I can be really picky when it comes to food. I don't eat any red meat, but I have, like, such a weird texture thing when it comes to food. So certain stuff, I just, I was just like, I'm not even hungry. I don't want to eat this. So yeah, they offered a bunch of different things, and, like, for example, like, if you were a vegan or a vegetarian, for a dinner, if maybe somebody who eats meat, they have a barbecue chicken, they would do an eggplant instead. And you would get rice and vegetables and stuff like that. So I thought that was really nice. I don't know, those are, like, little things that I think people forget. Sometimes, like, even regular everyday people forget to be conscious and mindful of the fact that, not everybody has the same diet, lives the same lifestyle. So I thought that was nice that they provided options. The majority of things were gluten-free. What else? Yeah, I would say, I think my favorite thing that I ate there was this mixed berry oatmeal bar. It was delicious. It was so good. Like, that was the one thing that whenever I'd see it on the schedule, I would be looking forward to it. It was just so, 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 so good. And honestly, like, they gave you a lot of water. You had a lot of water bottles. They give you tea or coffee. I don't drink coffee at all. I'm not that much of a tea person, but I once I started to have congestion, like a couple days in, I started wanting to drink the tea, obviously, because the hot water was definitely helping me feel better. Yeah, so that was the food. Plus, like I said, they did offer me a what's that word called? The Uber Eats discount code. So that was cool. Obviously, you were able to order food to the hotel, and they would kind of intercept it and then disinfect like the bag and stuff like that, and then bring it up to you and kind of leave it outside, or they'd hand it to you with like a pair of gloves and everything. If you are positive, and I think just in general, you cannot leave the room, period. You cannot leave the room at all. There's no taking a walk. There's no getting a little fresh air. You do not leave at all. Nowhere. My room, unfortunately for me, was facing an apartment building, and a lot of the windows were open, so I kind of felt bad keeping my windows open and like looking out. I kind of felt like I was invading other people's privacy because so many windows were open. Like, I could see into so many people's apartments, and I'm not that kind of weird creep that wants to like look at what people are doing in that sense. It just felt rude, so I always had my blinds closed, so you kind of just feel like you're in a windowless box. It does get to you, obviously. I'm not really a TV person. I didn't really watch any TV at all. I tried to read, but honestly, the first like 3 days or so, I just felt really weak. I was having a lot of muscle aches and pains, and I already have migraine issues, but it was pretty much constant, which I haven't had that experience in a while, so that was pretty annoying. So anytime I kind of was able to take a nap or do something like that, I would do that. I kind of wish that you were able to go outside, but that sort of defeats the purpose. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of difficult when you have that sort of, situation. So now, like I said, I want to get to the schedule and the check-ins. So they do multiple check-ins during the day, because obviously they want to see if you're alive, how your, condition is going. Are you feeling better? Are you feeling worse? Like, what's the deal? What should we look out for? Do you need to see a head nurse? I loved the fact that they had nurses, they had a head nurse, and then they had a full-blown like doctors in the hotel that were ready to, see you at a moment's notice. I almost had an experience where I had to go to the hospital, which obviously that's kind of like a nightmare in a sense, but I started having chest pains. It's very interesting because I didn't really have any respiratory symptoms. Like, I didn't have a cough. I was congested in my nose, but I didn't really have any like mucus or anything coming out. Like, it was, and my nose wasn't runny. It was kind of weird, but I started having really, really bad chest pains, which honestly now it was probably just like costochondritis or something caused by the coronavirus. But yeah, obviously they take that really seriously. As soon as I told somebody I had chest pains, I got visited and checked by like 4 or 5 different people, and they're like, look, if your chest pains persist, you need to go to the hospital because we need to do a more, in-depth check to make sure that there's nothing going on with your lungs, there's nothing going on with your heart, there's nothing going on with, this, that, and the third. So I obviously I really appreciated that. I think that they're being very diligent and they're trying their best, and I think that's all that I could ever ask for when it comes to that sort of thing. But the check-ins and the scheduling. So, as I said before, you have breakfast early in the morning between 7 and 8 a.m. Lunch is from noon to 1, and dinner is from 5:30 to 6:30. Now, they do check-ins in between. The first check-in would kind of be around 9 a.m. Then you would have lunch, obviously, at 12. I would say that they were really good at getting there, like, actually on time. I never had an experience where it's 8 o'clock and they're late, you know? Like, it's more like it's 7:02 and somebody's banging on my door and telling me, like, hey, breakfast is here. You know what I mean? Which, it's not the best way to wake up. I mean, I would say that's like I said, the one thing that I would kind of complain about, because I personally just don't sleep very well, and I found it difficult to get a good night's sleep having like the constant checkups. But obviously it's important because you know, you never know what's happening. There was somebody who was next door to me who didn't respond to one of the checkups, and I think they like found him. He had like thrown up on himself in his sleep and didn't know, you know what I mean? So he literally could have choked, and God knows what would have happened to him if they didn't do, you know, such frequent checkups. But, oh yeah, so 7 a.m. is breakfast. They come, bring you the breakfast. Then you would do, like I said, your first wellness check around 9 a.m. Then noon you have lunch. Then sometimes they would do a wellness check in between lunch and dinner. Sometimes they wouldn't. So that was kind of the time that I would be like, okay, I'm going to take a nap so I can really get in a decent stretch of sleep, because, you know, they would come with dinner around 5:36. Then they would do a wellness check at around 8:30, 9 p.m. And, you know, the first day I thought, well, this is probably like the last wellness check that they do, you know, 9 to 9. Sounds good.
No. Oh, no.
They come knocking at your door at like 1:30 in the morning. It is so stressful. Oh my gosh, they would wake me up out of my sleep. I mean, I'm being honest here, I would be shook. I was so shook having these people just like jump out and bang on the door. And it's like, obviously, if you don't respond, they're just going to bang louder and bang louder. And if you don't reply, they have to come in and check on you. And let me tell you, that like I said, that 1 a.m. check-in, that was rough. That was the one that I was just like, why why are you doing this to me? That was just so unpleasant for that aspect of it, because I don't know, like, you're sick, you want to sleep, like, you need to rest. So having so many different intervals of like being, you know, checked up on, that was, like I said, that was the one thing that I kind of felt a little frustrated with. I guess if there's anything else that I would have to kind of like complain about, it, you know, it was at no fault to the staff, but there was like a faulty fire alarm in my room. So one day it just started like going off, and somebody came to replace the batteries, and that was all fine and dandy, but then the fire alarm kept going, and you know, it was just going for hours and hours and hours. And obviously the people in the hotel, they have so many people that they need to deal with and so many people that they need to help. It's not like they can just run right at that moment to fix that one thing for me. So, you know, it took some time for them to be able to go, and then they realized that just the entire thing was just messed up, and the guy who came in, the second guy who came in to fix it, he yanked out the batteries, and the fire alarm was still beeping, and I was like, wow, that is fucking bonkers, you know what I mean? So that was the only other annoying thing, but they were really great about it. Yeah, what else? Besides that, I stayed in the hotel. Like I said in the beginning, you can stay anywhere from 10 to 14 days. I stayed for 10 days. That's the minimum. I thought that I would have had to stay for 14 days because I have multiple chronic illnesses, but because I'm not on any steroids, I'm not taking any like chemo drugs or anything like that, they don't necessarily consider me like immunocompromised, which I understand and I don't. I guess because technically the medication I'm taking doesn't suppress the immune system, but I would think that somebody who has a chronic illness, is still more so sensitive. I don't know. But yeah, so I only stayed 10 days. By that time I was kind of going stir crazy. You're sort of, I guess that's kind of where like when the mental health sort of situation kind of started getting to me a little bit. I mean, you're in a box. Like I said, I kind of kept my blinds closed out of respect of the apartment buildings that were next to my room that I could see. I just felt bad about being able to kind of look into people's spaces. So you just kind of feel like you're in a box, a windowless box. And I don't know, the closest thing that I could liken it to is like solitary confinement. If I'm being completely honest, that's sort of what it feels like. You don't really talk to anybody, you don't do anything, you can't go anywhere, the only thing that you see is just your room and then a bathroom. And then you're just having like these constant checkups, which are very brief. Obviously, they check your blood pressure, they check, your oxygen levels. It is cool because they give you this little thing. I kept mine. I don't know if I was supposed to keep it, but it's mine now. So this checks, your heart rate and your oxygen level, which I think is cool. But yeah, I would say like towards the end of my stay, I started having just kind of, I don't know, I just felt kind of sad. I kind of felt like a prisoner. And then I was kind of getting on myself because I was like, this is a voluntary choice. I voluntarily chose to isolate in this way. I wanted to protect my family, and I didn't regret it. And I knew that they were taking really good care of me. They were really checking in on me and making sure that I was okay, and I had food to eat and stuff like that, and I had a nice warm bed to sleep in, so I didn't really want to complain. I guess that's kind of my own problem. But, yeah, that's kind of how I would liken it to, in a sense. You feel very trapped, almost. So that was a bit difficult. And like I said, I started having that kind of survivor's guilt feeling of thinking like, there's so many people on the streets, and there's so many people who don't have the opportunity to, have these options, not even just like in the States, but in other countries and places all over the world. And it made me sad, it made me sad to think that, I don't know, it's like a little naive because obviously I'm aware that different places have different things, and there's so many different realities and so many different perspectives, and I'm somebody who's lucky that I have a lot of friends who are around the world, and they've been able to talk to me about their own coronavirus experiences with the pandemic, and it's hard to hear your friends or their family or anything like that suffering, and that they don't have the same options that maybe you would have. And then on top of it, you start to feel almost like, trapped in those options almost, so there was that guilt there of kind of feeling like, well, why am I complaining, or why do I feel sad, or why do I feel depressed, like, I'm so lucky to be able to have this option. Yeah, so I guess that was the whole kind of thing. On my last day, like I said, I stayed 10 days. On my last day, you basically talk to a social worker. They ask you if you need any options or any help or care. So they ask you about SSI. They ask you about any level of state benefits. They ask you if you need a lawyer, if you were in any kind of domestic violence or relationship abuse or an abusive household situation, and they'll give you resources for that. They give resources for immigration or people who are illegal. They give mental health resources, all sorts of stuff like that, and then you do what is considered like an exit slip. You talk about just how your experience was, what happened, did they check on you, do you feel like it was diligent, did you, is this something that you would recommend to other people, do you feel like this is a program that works, do you think it was beneficial of them to do? So I kind of did that, and then I waited a little bit once again for my transportation. Obviously this one was much faster just because the hotel put me in a cab that they called. And they also paid for it, which was really, really nice. And let me tell you, that first day out, it was a beautiful day. It had snowed at some point, the days passed, so kind of like being outside and seeing the sun and everything 10 days later, it was an emotional kind of experience for me, if I'm being honest. Like, it just felt so nice to be alive in that moment. Maybe a bit dramatic, but yeah, you know what it is. That was my COVID hotel program experience. Obviously, if you guys have any more questions, I'm totally willing to answer anything or give whatever like options or resources that I was given that maybe I didn't use, or whatever it is, like give people the information if they were to need it. I'm going to try to find the link for the NYC Health and Hospitals website where they specifically talk about the program and put it in my bio so that, anybody who lives in New York or in the New York area can check it out. Or if you guys were not aware of programs like this, they do have them in other states in the United States. I think Chicago and maybe Los Angeles has something like that, and a couple other places they have that if you are struggling or just recently got the coronavirus and you don't want to put other people at risk. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you very, very soon.